Marcus Thompson woke up every morning with the same empty feeling in his chest. At 32 years old, he was living in his mother's basement surrounded by empty pizza boxes and dirty clothes. The small dark room smelled like stale food and cigarettes. His mother Sarah worked 2 jobs to keep their small house running, while Marcus spent his days doing absolutely nothing useful. Every morning, Marcus would climb the creaky wooden stairs from the basement to find his mother already gone to work. She left him money on the kitchen counter for food, but Marcus had other plans for that cash. He would grab the 20-pound notes and head straight to the expensive neighborhood of Hampstead Heath, where rich people lived in beautiful houses. Walking through those clean streets filled Marcus with anger and jealousy. He saw expensive cars parked outside massive homes with perfect gardens. People in designer clothes walked their well-groomed dogs while talking on expensive phones. Marcus felt like the whole world was against him. Everyone else had money and success while he had nothing. The rage inside Marcus grew stronger every day. He started looking for ways to hurt others because it made him feel powerful. At first, he would key expensive cars when nobody was watching. Then he started breaking flower pots in front gardens. But these small acts of destruction were not enough to satisfy the darkness growing inside him. One day, Marcus was walking past a park when he saw a small brown dog playing alone near a bench. The dog looked happy and carefree, which made Marcus even more angry. Without thinking, he walked up to the innocent animal and kicked it hard in the side. The dog yelped in pain and ran away limping. For the first time in months, Marcus felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. That single moment changed everything for Marcus. He discovered that hurting defenseless animals gave him a rush of power that nothing else could provide. The sound of their cries and the way they ran away in fear made him feel like he was in control of something. It was sick and wrong, but Marcus did not care about right and wrong anymore. Marcus began planning his attacks carefully. He would spend hours walking through Hampstead Heath, looking for the perfect targets. Small dogs were his favorite because they made the loudest noises when hurt. He learned the schedules of dog owners and found the best times to strike when nobody was around to witness his cruelty. The neighbors in the area started talking about the mysterious attacks on their pets. Mrs. Johnson found her poodle hiding under the porch with a bruised leg. Mr. Williams discovered his elderly spaniel cowering behind trash cans with bite marks that looked like boot prints. Pet owners began keeping their animals inside more often, but Marcus was patient and clever. Marcus felt invisible and untouchable as he continued his reign of terror. He knew exactly how to avoid security cameras and how to strike when people were distracted. The police received several complaints, but they had no solid evidence and no witnesses willing to come forward. This made Marcus feel even more powerful and confident. Every successful attack fed the monster growing inside Marcus. He started keeping a mental count of how many animals he had hurt. The number climbed higher each week as he became bolder and more vicious. 20 dogs became 30, then 40. Each victim was someone else's beloved pet, but Marcus saw them only as objects for his twisted entertainment. The wealthy neighborhood that once made Marcus feel small and worthless had become his hunting ground. He walked those perfect streets like a predator searching for innocent prey. The beautiful houses and expensive cars no longer bothered him because he had found his own way to feel superior. Marcus had no idea that his next target would change his life forever. Tuesday morning started like any other day for Marcus Thompson. He grabbed the money his mother left on the kitchen counter and headed toward Hampstead Heath. The sun was shining brightly, and the expensive neighborhood looked even more beautiful than usual. Marcus felt that familiar anger rising in his chest as he walked past the grand houses with their perfect gardens. Marcus had been hunting for 3 hours without finding a good target. Most of the dogs he saw were with their owners or safely behind locked gates. He was getting frustrated and impatient. The twisted need to hurt something innocent was burning inside him, like a hungry monster demanding to be fed. Then Marcus saw them, and his heart started beating faster with excitement. 2 French bulldogs were playing together near the entrance of a magnificent townhouse. The house was huge with tall white columns and windows that sparkled like diamonds in the morning light. A black Bentley was parked in the circular driveway, showing that whoever lived here had serious money. The dogs were absolutely beautiful. One was cream-colored with dark patches around his eyes, while the other was solid fawn with a white chest. Their coats were perfectly groomed and shiny. They wore matching blue collars that looked expensive with small silver tags that caught the sunlight. These were clearly pampered pets who had never known a day of hardship in their lives. Marcus watched the dogs playing together and felt his anger growing stronger. They looked so happy and carefree rolling around on the perfectly cut grass. Their joy made him sick because it reminded him of everything he could never have. These dogs lived better lives than Marcus ever would, and that thought filled him with burning rage. He looked around, carefully checking for witnesses or security cameras. The street was completely empty. Most of the wealthy residents had already left for work in their expensive cars. The few people Marcus could see were far down the street, walking in the opposite direction. Even the house where the dogs lived showed no signs of activity. All the windows were dark, and there were no cars in the driveway. Marcus felt that familiar rush of power as he prepared to strike. He had done this so many times before that it felt automatic. He knew exactly how to approach animals without making them suspicious. His voice became soft and friendly as he called out to the unsuspecting dogs. The two French bulldogs looked up at Marcus with curious eyes. Their tails started wagging because they were used to humans being kind to them. They had lived their entire lives surrounded by love and care, so they had no reason to fear this stranger. The cream-colored dog trotted over first, followed closely by his companion. Marcus reached out his hand, pretending to offer affection. The trusting animals came closer, wanting to make a new friend. The smaller cream-colored dog even stood up on his back legs, trying to get closer to Marcus. This innocent gesture triggered something dark and violent in Marcus' mind. Without any warning, Marcus pulled back his right leg and delivered a brutal kick to the cream-colored dog. His heavy boot connected with the animal's ribs, sending the small body flying several feet across the concrete. The dog hit the ground hard and let out a heartbreaking cry of pain and confusion. The sound echoed off the expensive houses like a scream for help. The second dog immediately tried to protect his injured friend. He barked frantically and positioned himself between Marcus and the hurt animal. But Marcus was not finished with his cruel work. He kicked the brave defender even harder than the first, sending him tumbling across the pavement with a sickening thud. Both dogs lay on the ground, whimpering and shaking with pain and terror. Marcus stood over them, laughing at their suffering. The sound of their cries filled him with that twisted satisfaction he craved. He felt powerful and in control as he watched the innocent animals struggle to understand what had happened to them. Marcus walked away casually without looking back. He had no idea whose dogs he had just attacked. Jason Statham finished his morning workout in his private gym, feeling energized and ready for the day. Sweat dripped from his muscular frame as he toweled off and headed upstairs to shower. The famous action star had just returned from filming his latest movie and was enjoying some quiet time at his London home. He looked forward to spending the day with Bruno and Rocco, his two beloved French bulldogs who meant everything to him. Jason had rescued both dogs 3 years ago from a shelter where they had been abandoned and mistreated. Bruno, the cream-colored one, had been found tied to a fence in the rain, while Rocco, the fawn-colored one, had been surrendered by owners who no longer wanted him. Both dogs had trust issues when Jason first brought them home, but his patience and love had slowly healed their broken spirits. As Jason walked toward his bedroom, he expected to hear the familiar sound of paws running across the hardwood floors. Bruno and Rocco always greeted him with excited barks and wagging tails whenever he finished working out. But today the house was strangely quiet. Jason called their names but heard no response. A cold feeling of worry began to grow in his chest. Jason quickly put on a shirt and jeans before heading downstairs to look for his dogs. He checked their favorite sleeping spots in the living room and kitchen, but found nothing. The back door that led to the garden was still locked from the inside. Growing more concerned, Jason opened the front door to check if somehow the dogs had gotten outside. The sound that greeted Jason made his blood run cold. Soft whimpering was coming from somewhere near his front gate. He rushed outside in his bare feet and found Bruno and Rocco huddled together on the concrete driveway. Both dogs were shaking with fear and pain. Bruno was trying to stand, but kept falling over, while Rocco had visible marks on his side where he had been kicked. Jason dropped to his knees beside his injured pets, feeling his heart break into pieces. Bruno looked up at him with confused and frightened eyes, as if asking why someone had hurt him. Rocco was breathing heavily and flinched when Jason tried to touch him. These were not the happy, confident dogs Jason had left playing in the garden an hour ago. Rage began building inside Jason like a volcano ready to explode. Someone had deliberately hurt his innocent animals while he was working out just 50 feet away. The person who did this had to be a complete monster to attack defenseless pets who had already suffered so much in their lives. Jason felt like he had failed to protect the two creatures who depended on him completely. With shaking hands, Jason carefully lifted Bruno and carried him toward the house. The small dog whimpered softly but did not struggle because he trusted Jason completely. Rocco followed slowly, limping on 3 legs and looking around nervously, as if expecting another attack. Jason promised both dogs that he would find whoever did this and make them pay. Jason placed both dogs gently on blankets in his living room before calling his veterinarian, Sarah Mitchell. He explained what had happened, and she agreed to meet them at her clinic immediately. While waiting for the car to arrive, Jason sat with Bruno and Rocco, speaking to them in a soft voice and telling them everything would be okay. The drive to the veterinary clinic felt like the longest 20 minutes of Jason's life. He kept looking back at his injured pets, wondering what kind of sick person would hurt innocent animals for fun. Bruno had stopped whimpering, but his breathing was shallow and uneven. Rocco kept looking at Jason with eyes that seemed to be asking for help. Jason made a silent promise as they pulled into the clinic parking lot. He would use every resource at his disposal to find the person responsible for this attack. Someone was going to learn that Jason Statham was not just an action hero on movie screens. When it came to protecting his family, including his 4-legged family members, he was absolutely ruthless in real life. Sarah Mitchell had been treating animals for 15 years, but she had never seen Jason Statham look so worried and angry. The famous actor paced back and forth in the examination room while she carefully checked Bruno and Rocco for injuries. His usual calm confidence was replaced by barely controlled rage as he watched his beloved pets being examined. The news was worse than Jason had feared. Bruno had 2 fractured ribs and severe bruising across his chest and stomach. The kick had been so hard that it could have caused internal bleeding if it had hit him at a different angle. Rocco had deep bruising along his side and a possible hairline fracture in his left leg. Both dogs were in significant pain and would need weeks of recovery time. Mitchell explained that the injuries were definitely caused by someone wearing heavy boots who had kicked the animals with tremendous force. She had seen similar wounds before because there had been a string of animal attacks in the Hampstead Heath area over the past 2 months. At least 12 other dogs had been brought to local veterinary clinics with identical injuries. Jason listened to every word, feeling his anger grow stronger with each detail. This was not a random act of cruelty, but part of a pattern of attacks by someone who enjoyed hurting defenseless animals. The thought that some sick person had been terrorizing the neighborhood pets made Jason feel physically ill. He could not understand how anyone could find pleasure in causing pain to innocent creatures. While Mitchell prepared pain medication and antibiotics for Bruno and Rocco, Jason stepped outside to make some phone calls. He contacted his head of security, Marcus Williams, and explained the situation. Marcus had worked with Jason for 8 years, handling everything from fan mail to serious security threats. He had never heard Jason sound so determined to catch someone. Within 1 hour, Marcus Williams arrived at the veterinary clinic with a laptop computer and portable printer. He had already begun gathering security footage from cameras throughout the Hampstead Heath neighborhood. Many of the wealthy residents had expensive surveillance systems that recorded everything happening on their streets 24 hours a day. Jason and Marcus spent the next 3 hours reviewing video footage from 12 different security cameras. They fast-forwarded through hours of recordings looking for anyone who appeared to be following or approaching dogs. The work was tedious, but Jason refused to take a break until they found something useful. At 4:30 in the afternoon, they finally got their first real clue. A camera mounted on a house 2 streets away from Jason's home had recorded a man in a dark jacket approaching a golden retriever 3 days earlier. The footage was not clear enough to see the man's face, but it showed him kicking the dog before walking away quickly. Marcus enhanced the video using professional software, and they were able to get a partial view of the attacker's profile. He appeared to be in his 30s with brown hair, and was wearing dark jeans with heavy black boots. The man walked with a slight limp that suggested he might have an old injury to his left leg. The breakthrough came when Marcus found footage from a camera near the local shopping center. The same man was clearly visible buying cigarettes at a corner shop just 1 hour before the attack on Bruno and Rocco. This time, the camera angle was perfect, and they could see his face in full detail. Marcus ran the image through facial recognition software that connected to public databases and social media platforms. Within minutes, they had a match. The man who had attacked Jason's dogs was named Marcus Thompson, age 32. He lived with his mother just 6 blocks away from Jason's house in a small terraced house on Elm Street. Jason stared at the photograph of Marcus Thompson, memorizing every detail of his face. The man looked exactly like the type of coward who would hurt animals for entertainment. His eyes were cold and empty, with no sign of kindness or compassion. Jason could see the weakness and anger that drove someone to attack creatures who could not fight back. Marcus Williams printed out everything they had discovered, including Marcus Thompson's full address and information about his daily routine. The security footage showed that Marcus Thompson visited the same pub every evening between 6 and 9 o'clock. He had no job and no friends, which explained why he spent his time wandering around looking for innocent animals to hurt. Jason looked at his watch and saw that it was almost 5:30. Marcus Thompson would be heading to his usual pub soon, completely unaware that his cruel hobby had finally caught up with him. Jason made his decision quickly. Tonight, Marcus Thompson would learn what it felt like to be afraid. Jason Statham sat in his car outside the Red Lion pub watching Marcus Thompson through the window. The pathetic man was sitting alone at the bar drinking beer and talking loudly to anyone who would listen. Jason had been studying his target for 2 hours, learning everything about his habits and personality. What he saw disgusted him completely. Marcus Thompson was exactly the type of coward Jason despised most. He was loud and aggressive when he thought nobody important was watching, but Jason could see the weakness underneath. This was a man who had never faced real consequences for his actions. He picked on animals and children because he was too scared to confront anyone who might fight back. Through the pub window, Jason watched Marcus bragging to the bartender about his latest victims. The sick man was actually laughing while describing how he had kicked 2 French bulldogs that morning. He made jokes about their cries of pain and mimicked the way they had limped away. The other customers at the bar looked disgusted and moved away from Marcus, but he was too drunk to notice. Jason felt his hands clench into fists as he listened to Marcus celebrate the attack on Bruno and Rocco. Every detail matched exactly what Jason had found when he discovered his injured pets. This monster was not only cruel but stupid enough to confess his crimes to a room full of witnesses. Jason realized that Marcus had probably been bragging about his animal attacks for months. The action star had spent his entire career playing tough guys who delivered justice to villains, but this was different. This was personal and real. Jason had to be very careful about how he handled Marcus Thompson. He could not simply beat him up, no matter how much the man deserved it. Jason was too famous, and any violence would create a media circus that would hurt his career. Jason pulled out his phone and called his stunt coordinator friend Danny Chen. Danny had worked on dozens of action movies and knew how to create realistic scenarios that looked dangerous but were actually controlled. Jason explained the situation and asked Danny to meet him with some equipment they might need. The plan Jason developed was simple but effective. Marcus Thompson needed to understand what it felt like to be the victim instead of the predator. Jason would confront him in a way that would terrify him without actually causing physical harm. The goal was to break Marcus psychologically and force him to stop his cruel behavior forever. Danny arrived 30 minutes later with a bag full of props and equipment. He had brought fake blood capsules, smoke bombs, and even a realistic-looking knife that was actually made of rubber. Jason appreciated his friend's willingness to help, but decided to keep things simple. Sometimes the most effective approach was just honest intimidation. At 8:45, Marcus Thompson stumbled out of the Red Lion pub clearly drunk and pleased with himself. He had spent the entire evening telling anyone who would listen about his morning adventure with the French bulldogs. Most people had ignored him or walked away, but Marcus was too intoxicated to care about their reactions. Jason waited until Marcus was halfway down the dark street before getting out of his car. The area was poorly lit with only a few working streetlights creating pools of yellow light surrounded by deep shadows. Jason moved silently through the darkness using skills he had learned from years of action movie training. Marcus was walking slowly and unsteadily, weaving back and forth across the empty street. He was humming to himself and occasionally laughing at his own private jokes. Jason could smell the alcohol on him from 20 feet away. This was perfect because drunk people were more easily scared and less likely to make smart decisions. Jason positioned himself in the shadows ahead of Marcus, knowing exactly when and where to make his appearance. He had done this type of scene dozens of times in movies, but never with real stakes. His heart was beating fast, but he felt completely focused and determined. Marcus Thompson had no idea that his life was about to change forever. He continued walking toward his mother's house, thinking about what animals he might attack tomorrow. The darkness around him seemed peaceful and safe. He had no reason to suspect that someone was watching him or that justice was finally coming for his cruel actions. Jason stepped out of the shadows directly into Marcus' path. The drunk man almost walked straight into him before looking up and seeing who was blocking his way. Marcus stopped walking and stared at Jason with confusion and growing fear. Even in his intoxicated state, he recognized the famous face immediately. The confrontation that Marcus Thompson had unknowingly been walking toward his entire life was about to begin. Marcus Thompson stopped walking so suddenly that he almost fell over. The alcohol in his system made everything feel unreal and confusing, but he knew exactly who was standing in front of him. Jason Statham, the famous action movie star, was blocking his path on the dark street. Marcus blinked several times, thinking he might be hallucinating from too much beer. Jason stood perfectly still under the streetlight, letting Marcus get a good look at him. The actor was wearing dark clothes, and his face showed no emotion at all. His eyes were cold and focused like a predator studying its prey. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he realized this was not a chance meeting or coincidence. The silence stretched between them for almost 30 seconds before Jason finally spoke. His voice was quiet but carried clearly through the empty street. Every word was pronounced carefully and deliberately, like he was reading lines from a script that could end with violence. Marcus, you have been attacking dogs in this neighborhood for months. This morning you kicked 2 French bulldogs near a house on Wellington Road. Those dogs belong to me. Their names are Bruno and Rocco, and they are both in serious pain because of what you did to them. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice water as the reality of his situation became clear. The French bulldogs he had attacked that morning belonged to Jason Statham. He had picked the wrong target in the worst possible way. Marcus tried to speak, but only managed to make a choking sound as his throat closed up with fear. Jason took one step closer and Marcus automatically stepped backward. The drunk man was suddenly completely sober as adrenaline flooded his system. He had seen Jason Statham in dozens of action movies where the actor played tough guys who hurt bad people. Marcus realized he was now one of those bad people and Jason was not acting anymore. You thought it was funny to hurt innocent animals, Marcus. You have been bragging about it in the pub for hours. You described exactly how you kicked my dogs and laughed about their pain. You made jokes about how they cried and limped away. Did you think there would never be any consequences for your cruelty? Marcus tried to stammer out an apology, but Jason held up one hand to silence him. The gesture was so commanding that Marcus immediately stopped talking. He felt like a small child being scolded by an angry parent, except this parent was famous for beating up villains in movies. Bruno and Rocco are rescue dogs, Marcus. They were abandoned and abused before I adopted them 3 years ago. It took months of patience and love to help them trust humans again. They had finally learned to be happy and feel safe. Then you came along and destroyed all of that progress in 30 seconds. Jason reached into his jacket pocket, and Marcus flinched, expecting to see a weapon. Instead, Jason pulled out his phone and showed Marcus a photo of Bruno and Rocco lying on blankets looking hurt and scared. The image made Marcus feel sick to his stomach as he saw the real results of his cruel actions. Look at them, Marcus. Look at what you did to 2 innocent animals who never hurt anyone. Bruno has 2 broken ribs and Rocco can barely walk. They spent the day at the veterinary hospital getting x-rays and pain medication. They are terrified and confused because they do not understand why someone would hurt them. Marcus stared at the photo, feeling emotions he had not experienced in years. For the first time, he was seeing his victims as real living creatures instead of objects for his entertainment. The dogs in the picture looked small and helpless. Marcus realized that Bruno and Rocco had probably trusted him when he approached them, just like all his other victims. Jason put his phone away and moved closer to Marcus until they were only 3 feet apart. Marcus could see every detail of the actor's face and the controlled anger burning in his eyes. Jason was not shouting or making threats, but somehow that made him even more frightening. Marcus knew he was in serious trouble. You have been attacking animals because you think they cannot fight back, Marcus. You pick on creatures who are smaller and weaker than you because you are a coward. But every dog you hurt belongs to someone. Every animal you kick for fun is somebody's family member. Today you attacked my family. Marcus wanted to run away, but his legs felt frozen. He was trapped between Jason and a brick wall with nowhere to go. The street was completely empty, and nobody would hear him if he screamed for help. Marcus finally understood what it felt like to be helpless and afraid, just like all the animals he had terrorized. Now you are going to learn what consequences feel like, Marcus. You have 2 choices, and you need to make your decision right now. We can handle this quietly between us, or I can call the police and let them deal with you. What do you think will happen when the newspapers find out that Marcus Thompson has been attacking dogs for fun in Hampstead Heath? Marcus Thompson stood frozen against the brick wall, feeling smaller and more afraid than he had ever felt in his entire life. Jason Statham continued staring at him with those cold, determined eyes waiting for an answer. Marcus tried to think of some way to escape this situation, but his alcohol-clouded brain could not come up with any solutions. Please, Miss Statham, I am really sorry about your dogs. I did not know they belonged to you. I would never have touched them if I had known. Marcus' voice was shaking and barely above a whisper. He sounded like a scared child trying to avoid punishment from an angry adult. Jason shook his head slowly, showing no sign of sympathy or forgiveness. You are missing the point completely, Marcus. The problem is not that you attacked my dogs specifically. The problem is that you have been attacking innocent animals for months. You hurt them because you enjoyed their pain. That makes you a monster. Marcus felt tears starting to form in his eyes as the full weight of his actions began to sink in. He had never thought about the dogs as real individuals with feelings and families who loved them. To Marcus, they had just been targets for his anger and frustration. Now he was being forced to see them as Jason saw them. Let me tell you about Bruno and Rocco, Marcus. Jason pulled out his phone again and showed Marcus another photo. This one showed both dogs playing happily in a sunny garden before the attack. They looked carefree and joyful with their tails wagging and tongues hanging out. Bruno was found tied to a fence in the rain when he was just 6 months old. His first owners abandoned him because they decided they did not want a puppy anymore. He was terrified of humans when I adopted him. It took me 8 months to teach him that not all people would hurt him. This morning you destroyed all of that progress in 30 seconds. Marcus looked at the happy dogs in the photo, feeling a strange new emotion growing in his chest. He realized it was guilt and shame, two feelings he had not experienced since he was a small child. The dogs looked so innocent and trusting that Marcus could not understand how he had ever wanted to hurt them. Rocco has an even sadder story, Jason continued. His previous owners used to kick him and hit him with newspapers when he made mistakes. He was so traumatized that he would not eat or play for the first 3 months I had him. It took 2 years of gentle care to help him learn to trust again. Today you brought back all of his worst memories. Jason showed Marcus a third photo of Rocco cowering in a corner, looking terrified and hurt. The dog in this picture was completely different from the happy animal Marcus had seen playing in the garden. This was a broken creature who had given up hope of ever being safe or loved. You did not just hurt their bodies, Marcus. You hurt their minds and spirits. Bruno and Rocco thought they were finally safe from cruelty. They believed that all humans would treat them with kindness. You taught them that they were wrong to trust. You reminded them that the world is full of people who enjoy causing pain. Marcus felt physically sick as he began to understand the true impact of his actions. He had not just caused temporary pain to random animals. He had traumatized beloved family members and destroyed years of careful healing. The weight of this realization was crushing. Jason reached into his other pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. Inside were veterinary bills totaling over £3,000 for the treatment of Bruno and Rocco, plus 12 other dogs that Marcus had attacked over the past 2 months. Every single incident had been documented with security camera footage and witness statements. This is what your fun has cost, Marcus. £3,000 in medical bills for animals that did nothing wrong except trust the wrong person. But money cannot fix the psychological damage you have caused. Bruno wakes up whimpering from nightmares now. Rocco refuses to go outside without me because he is afraid of being attacked again. Marcus stared at the veterinary bills, realizing that he could never afford to pay such a huge amount. His mother gave him £20 a day, and he had no savings or job. The financial consequences alone would destroy his comfortable, lazy lifestyle. But Jason was not finished explaining the full price of Marcus' actions. Here is what is going to happen, Marcus. You have 2 choices, and you need to decide right now. Choice 1 is that I call the police and press charges for animal cruelty. The security footage I have collected will ensure that you go to prison. The newspapers will write stories about Jason Statham's dogs being attacked, and your face will be on every front page in Britain. Marcus imagined his photograph in the newspapers with headlines calling him a monster who tortured innocent animals. Everyone in the country would know his name and face. He would never be able to go anywhere without being recognized as the coward who hurt defenseless pets. His life would be completely destroyed. Choice 2 is that you agree to my terms and make amends for what you have done. You will pay every penny of these medical bills, even if it takes you years. You will volunteer at animal shelters and learn what it really means to care for creatures who cannot protect themselves. And you will never hurt another animal as long as you live. Jason stepped closer to Marcus until they were almost touching. His voice became even quieter, but somehow more threatening. If you choose option 2 and then break our agreement, I will make sure that option 1 happens anyway. I have resources and connections that you cannot imagine. I will be watching you, Marcus. Always. Marcus Thompson did not need time to think about his decision. The thought of his face being plastered across newspaper headlines as an animal abuser was terrifying enough to make him agree to anything Jason demanded. He chose option 2, immediately stammering out his acceptance while tears ran down his cheeks. Jason handed Marcus a legal document that had already been prepared by his lawyers. The contract outlined exactly what Marcus would have to do to avoid criminal prosecution. Reading through the terms, Marcus realized that his entire life was about to change in ways he had never imagined possible. The first requirement was that Marcus had to pay back every penny of the veterinary bills for all the animals he had attacked. The total amount was £3,200, which was more money than Marcus had ever seen in his life. He would have to get a real job for the first time and work for months just to pay off his debt. Marcus also had to volunteer at the Hampstead Animal Rescue Center for 6 months. He would work there every single day cleaning kennels, feeding animals, and learning proper animal care from professional staff. The shelter director, Mrs. Elizabeth Harper, had already been contacted and agreed to supervise Marcus personally. The most frightening requirement was that Marcus had to attend anger management counseling sessions twice a week with Dr. Patricia Williams. He would have to talk about his feelings and learn healthy ways to deal with his anger and frustration. Marcus had never spoken to a therapist before, and the idea terrified him almost as much as going to prison. Jason also demanded that Marcus write personal apology letters to every single pet owner whose animal he had attacked. The letters had to be handwritten and explain exactly what Marcus had done and why he was sorry. He would have to face the pain he had caused to real families who loved their pets. The final and most humiliating requirement was that Marcus had to give educational presentations at local schools about the importance of treating animals with kindness and respect. Children would learn about animal cruelty prevention by hearing from someone who had actually committed these crimes. Marcus signed the contract with shaking hands, knowing that he had no other choice. Jason had him completely trapped, and the evidence against him was overwhelming. Every security camera in the neighborhood had recorded his attacks, and dozens of witnesses had seen him bragging about his cruelty in the pub. The next morning, Marcus woke up feeling like his entire world had collapsed around him. He had to tell his mother, Sarah, what had happened and ask her to help him find a job. Sarah was shocked and disgusted when she learned about her son's cruel hobby. She had always known Marcus was lazy and selfish, but she never imagined he would hurt innocent animals. Sarah kicked Marcus out of the basement and told him he could only come back when he had proven he was serious about changing his life. For the first time in years, Marcus had to take care of himself without his mother's support. He found a job washing dishes at a restaurant and rented a tiny studio apartment with his first paycheck. Working at the animal shelter was the hardest part of Marcus' punishment. Mrs. Harper made sure he understood exactly what his victims had experienced. She showed him dogs who had been abandoned, beaten, and neglected by cruel humans. Marcus saw firsthand how animal abuse affected innocent creatures who just wanted to be loved. The shelter was full of animals who had been hurt by people like Marcus. There was a three-legged cat named Shadow who had been kicked so hard that his leg had to be amputated. An elderly dog named Max cowered in the corner of his kennel because his previous owner had beaten him with a stick. Every animal Marcus met was living proof of human cruelty. At first, Marcus hated going to the shelter and only did the minimum required work. But slowly something began to change inside him as he spent time with the rescued animals. He started to see them as individuals with personalities and feelings instead of objects to be hurt or ignored. The anger management sessions with Dr. Williams were equally difficult but necessary. Marcus had to confront the deep-seated rage and jealousy that had driven him to attack innocent animals. He learned that his cruelty came from feeling powerless and worthless in his own life. Hurting animals had been his twisted way of feeling strong and in control. Dr. Williams helped Marcus understand that real strength came from protecting and caring for those who were weaker, not from hurting them. She taught him healthy ways to deal with his anger through exercise, meditation, and talking about his feelings instead of acting violently. The school presentations were embarrassing, but Marcus gradually became good at explaining to children why animal cruelty was wrong. He told them about Bruno and Rocco and how his actions had caused real pain to innocent creatures. The children asked difficult questions that forced Marcus to think deeply about his past behavior. After 3 months of this new routine, Marcus realized that he felt different inside. The constant anger and hatred that had consumed him for years was slowly fading away. Working with rescued animals and seeing their capacity for forgiveness, despite past abuse, had changed his perspective on life completely. 6 months after his confrontation with Jason Statham, Marcus Thompson was completely unrecognizable as the same person who had once terrorized neighborhood pets for entertainment. His transformation had been so complete that even his own mother, Sarah, barely recognized the man her son had become. Marcus still worked at the restaurant washing dishes, but he had been promoted to assistant cook because of his reliability and positive attitude. His boss, Mr. Shen, had never seen an employee change so dramatically in such a short time. Marcus arrived early, stayed late, and treated everyone with respect and kindness. The most remarkable change was visible at the Hampstead Animal Rescue Center, where Marcus had not only completed his required 6 months of volunteer service, but had chosen to continue working there in his free time. Mrs. Harper was amazed by his dedication and genuine love for the animals in their care. Marcus had developed a special bond with the most traumatized animals at the shelter. Dogs and cats who had been abused and abandoned seemed to sense that he understood their pain in a way that other volunteers could not. His patience with frightened animals was unlimited, and his gentle approach helped them learn to trust humans again. The biggest surprise came when Marcus decided to adopt a senior dog named Charlie who had been at the shelter for over a year. Charlie was 12 years old with arthritis and other health problems that made him difficult to place with a family. Most people wanted young, healthy pets, but Marcus saw something special in the elderly dog's tired eyes. Charlie had been surrendered by his previous owners when he became too expensive to care for. The old dog was depressed and had given up hope of ever finding a real home. Marcus spent weeks sitting with Charlie, talking to him and slowly building trust. When Charlie finally wagged his tail for the first time, everyone at the shelter cried with joy. Marcus' apartment was transformed to accommodate Charlie's needs. He bought a special orthopedic bed, soft blankets, and all the medical supplies Charlie required. Every morning before work, Marcus would help Charlie with his medication and take him for slow, gentle walks around the neighborhood. The same streets where Marcus had once hunted for victims to hurt now became places of healing and love. Neighbors who had once feared and avoided Marcus began to smile and wave when they saw him caring for Charlie. Mrs. Johnson, whose poodle Marcus had once kicked, even stopped to chat and thank him for his work at the animal shelter. Dear Williams was amazed by the changes she saw in Marcus during their weekly counseling sessions. The angry, bitter man who had first come to her office had been replaced by someone who genuinely cared about making amends for his past actions. Marcus spoke passionately about his work with rescued animals and his plans to help even more creatures in need. Marcus had also become one of the most requested speakers at local schools where he shared his story with children. His presentations were no longer embarrassing obligations, but meaningful opportunities to prevent other young people from making his mistakes. Children listened with fascination as he explained how his anger had led him down a dark path and how caring for animals had saved his soul. The veterinary bills that had once seemed impossible to pay had been completely settled through Marcus' hard work and careful budgeting. He had even started a small savings account to help pay for medical care for shelter animals who needed expensive treatments. Jason Statham occasionally checked on Marcus' progress through his security team and was genuinely surprised by the reports he received. The man who had brutally attacked Bruno and Rocco had become a passionate advocate for animal welfare. Jason had expected compliance but not complete transformation. Bruno and Rocco had fully recovered from their physical injuries and were once again the happy, confident dogs they had been before the attack. Jason made sure they received extra love and attention, helping them overcome the psychological trauma of their experience. Both dogs gradually learned to trust strangers again, though they remained more cautious than before. One evening, Jason was walking Bruno and Rocco through Hampstead Heath when he encountered Marcus and Charlie coming from the opposite direction. Both men recognized each other immediately, and the meeting was tense for a moment. Marcus stopped walking and looked down at Bruno and Rocco with obvious remorse in his eyes. "Miss Statham, I know I can never truly make up for what I did to Bruno and Rocco, but I want you to know that I am not the same person who hurt them. Every day I work to honor their suffering by helping other animals who have been abandoned and abused. I hope someday you can forgive me." Jason studied Marcus' face carefully, looking for any sign of deception or manipulation. What he saw was genuine remorse and a fundamental change in character that seemed impossible but was clearly real. Bruno and Rocco showed no fear or aggression toward Marcus, which surprised Jason more than anything else. Charlie wagged his tail and tried to approach Bruno and Rocco with friendly curiosity. The old dog had no idea about the history between his owner and these beautiful French bulldogs. All Charlie knew was that Marcus loved animals, and that made these dogs potential new friends. Jason watched Marcus gently restrain Charlie while speaking softly to calm him down. The tenderness and patience Marcus showed with his elderly dog was completely different from the cruelty he had once displayed. This was not the same man who had kicked innocent animals for fun. After a brief conversation, Jason walked away feeling confused but somehow hopeful. Marcus Thompson had proven that even the cruelest people could change if they truly wanted to make amends for their actions. The man who had once brought darkness to the neighborhood had become a source of light and healing for animals in need.